All right, so we are narrowing it down. Some practical steps. I think we've shared that. Some just again knowing the laws of the state that you're in, right? Knowing the laws of the state that you are in is really important when it comes to just making sure that they're getting the courses that are required. So that you can always back it up to show like, no, I've given what I was required that I was asked to give them. And you're good and you're covered, right? I definitely think it is important to plan for them. Now, I know homeschool will look different by household, but that myth when it said that children sit around all day, right? A lot of times people think homeschool and they think, okay, because the children are advanced, the children are ahead of themselves, and a lot of times they are, but it does still require you to be involved. It does. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest things when I speak with other, sisters is because of, again, like Sabria presented on the mind, when the children go to school, there's sort of a disconnect and it shouldn't be that disconnect. They go to school, the teacher educates them, and it's like, that's not my job. I'm the parent, you're the teacher, it's your job to teach them, but it's our job primarily to teach them. And so homeschool makes that a reality. And if you're not going to be diligent, I mean, I feel like, okay, there is going to be levels that's different for each home, but you have to be diligent. You got to be diligent for what that standard is that you set for the home, because if not, you will notice, and there is a thing, we want to be truthful. There are children that are homeschooled that are way behind, that are super behind. They don't know a thing. They have not schooled. They've done school for once every other 2 weeks, and it's probably was for 35 minutes. So that, just to be realistic, that's not an effective way to teach them. You do still need structure, and that's going to be according to you, of course, how you do that. But having children in general just do better with consistency, and with structure. So you've got to have that discipline that's there. So I definitely would say those are the two for me. Sisters, I don't know what you want to add to that. I would say, definitely knowing the laws, because you don't want to have issues there. You don't went through a whole entire program and you didn't follow any of the rules, and now nothing is being counted for homeschool, in the sense of you didn't give them any of what your state required, one, and then two, just that diligence. Those would be the two things as far as practical tips for a first-time parent. And sorry, and the last thing I would add to that is, don't give yourself that space to grow. I changed the schedule 1,000 times with homeschooling. I always thought I had it, and then another 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, no, this would work better. You will definitely get the flow that works for your home, and it takes time, so give yourself that room and set that as an expectation that, okay, I'm going to be figuring this out. Allow yourself that room to figure it out. Otherwise, you'll be overwhelmed. I mean, I was overwhelmed, and I was overwhelmed because I just was my mind was just, I wanted it to be what it was that I was, well, come on, stop, go sit down. Okay, they're restless at this point, but it's like, I wanted it to be from what the structure was that I was following at school. And I realized that no, this is my school, so it's a difference. I'm dealing with my children that are, it was just different. That from what I was wrapping my mind around, that I had to just really get the flow of it. But you will get it. So that's my encouragement, just to know the laws, be diligent with setting up a plan, and give yourself the time to grow into it. It will definitely come together.
Yeah, I just wanted to stress, like, Facebook Marketplace, or just even joining Facebook groups if you're on Facebook. I know in my area, not only do we have the homeschool group, but they just opened up another group for just moms who homeschool in my specific town that I live in. So like those are also incredibly helpful, even just moms giving away things sometimes, like if you, you'll find that some mom has this, or, being a part of those groups are helpful, because then not only can you bless other moms with something that you may have, but then they can be a blessing to you or whomever. So those are like really good resources as well.
Absolutely. Just yes, everything that they've said. Definitely. One of the things that a sister who had been homeschooling for a long time uh, said to me, our structure in our homeschool is my husband's the principal and I'm the lead teacher. And so her first advice, which I thought was priceless, was to ask your husband what he wants your children to learn. And that really also helped guide just how I was educating the boys and that kind of thing. Me being a primary teacher, but I'm not the only. Like I said, he definitely steps in for certain classes, but it just helped give me a focus of which way to go. So if you're a two-parent household, I think that's a great way to start. Um, and just having a support system, whether it's like, you know, the sisters are mentioning online, or if you have other people around you who are homeschooling and they don't have a support group, create one. And that's like what we did. We had a group of us home starting to homeschool at the same time, and there were plenty of others that had already been homeschooling, but they really weren't utilizing each other. And so don't be afraid to start a support group or something like that that's needed to fill in those gaps for your children.
Absolutely. That's really great, sisters. And I love that, your husband being the principal. Absolutely. All right. So in regards to working parents, parents that are wanting to homeschool and still at work, or still working, I'm not going to actually stress on anything over here. Do you guys have anything in particular that you would want to share to that? I'll let you guys speak to that.
Sure. So when I first started, I was working. So um, similar, I think that Zakia said that she had before a Sunday, like a Sunday through Friday or something. We started off with that where I would teach on Sundays because I needed that weekend to really get in more classes since I was working full time. Then I moved to part time, and now I'm not working at all. But all praises to the Most High is because I think He's just blessed our diligence and our desire for trying to do what we needed to educate our children. But I say all that to say that it is possible. I was so nervous about starting when I was working, and I took the boys to a museum and met a physical therapist randomly who she was a woman, and she was telling me how she is a full-time physical therapist and she homeschools her two boys. And we just randomly got in a conversation, and the Most High knows what you need when you need it. And I was like almost in tears talking to this stranger because I was so nervous and trying to figure out how I could possibly start working full time, and my husband was working full time. And just speaking with her just really was just like a weight that was lifted off my shoulders to say, yes, you can do this. And so, yeah, your hours for homeschool do not have to be nines or anything like how we are now. We had afternoons, which would be basically after, because even when I was working full time, I was still able to, start school with them at 2 or 3. Um, so 3 to 6, doing that, or 3 to 7, something like that, as opposed to during the day. And then, like I said, really utilizing Sundays. Um, if you're a single parent, we have some in our congregation that are single parents and they work full time and are homeschooling. So what they really do is utilize their network. So you might not have a grandparent or a sibling or someone that can teach, but they might be able to be home during the day where you can give your child some independent work. Or if you're utilizing something like an easy peasy or something like that where they can have some things that are you know self-directed, but that has a teacher or something, a video that they can watch, that they can do some things independently, is my point. um that they can do while they're with them, and then you really hit those subjects that they need direct instruction for when you get home. So it can be difficult, but it's possible. And then I will also just say to encourage, especially for two-parent households, really itemize what your job is bringing in, right? So if you're having to pay for outside childcare or this kind of thing, like really like once you start deducting things, you'll see what you're really making and really be able to see if it's worth it. And like I said, all praises to the Most High. He just constantly, every year, we're, just made ways for us and to financially bless us that I'm able to be home full time now, and I'm not taking clients. But um, I definitely plan to do that. Once they're in high school or maybe college, that kind of thing. I'm always keeping up my licenses. But there's only a brief period of time when your children are home. When your children will be this age, they'll never be 4 again, they'll never be 7 again, they'll never be 13 again. And so do what you can, and the Most High will bless your sacrifice. I believe that, if you're doing the right thing, that for each one of us, all of us are children of the Most High. He will bless your sacrifice and make ways where there are no ways. So if you're feeling like I'm working full time, I don't know what I can do, you can. It just takes a little more creativity. And like I said, don't feel like your school time has to look like everybody else's.
So true, sis. That is so true. That is a true testament. I taught at the university, would get off. I taught at a private school in the morning till about noon, would come home, nurse a haftia. After I took off from nursing her, I would drive back to Wingate College University. I would teach there, and I would get back home at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And we would go ahead and still be picking up with some of the basics. At that time, I was just doing the reading with them or whatever. Then I shifted, and then I was leaving out of the university setting and going straight into just teaching K through 12. I taught all day long. I taught, and then I would, one school was working with me where I can come in and I can nurse. And then I was able to kind of get a full-time schedule. I was only there 3 days a week. That's just the Father's grace, to be honest with you. And then I had those other days off. So I was able to kind of focus on those 2 days. Then I went teaching where I was closer to home, but I was on a full-time schedule. And then I had to come in and teach after work. And I taught there. I got back home because I lived very close. My school was very close to the house. I got back here to the house. And then the kids, we end up going all the way to around 8, where, 7:38, where they would finish school and they would shower and go to bed. And some of the days, like, I honestly didn't think that I could make it. But every time the alarm went off in the morning and I had to get up to now leave out and go out again, I felt like, but if you put your mind to it, it surely can happen. There had to be things that had to be adjusted so that it could be bearable for me, especially when I noticed that I was losing patience with my children. And that's what I did not want to do. I hated when you were growing up, for me at least, and it would be like, you didn't hear, that aggravation and that frustration that would kick in from parents to children. I didn't want to do that. And I was noticing that I was losing my patience with them. And I didn't want to put that scar into them, because of that. And I knew it was me. And so on days that I was extremely overwhelmed, I was not concerned about covering all the material. I was concerned that it's okay for us to read. It's okay for us to do something light. And it's okay for y'all to eat and go to bed. Like, it was just what was going to be the reality for it, because I knew my energy was gone. And then I began to just learn what would be, my husband was, thinking with them during the day, and then we would swap. And so for him to take the certain levels of material during the day, and then I would take this portion of it in the afternoon. But my heart was still there. I couldn't stop with them with not wanting to homeschool them. And as Sister Melissa was saying, I do believe the Father will work it out for that, work it out for you in those regards. And then it just switched. And then now I'm home. I still teach, but I teach virtually, and I teach based around me teaching the kids. So I teach at the school in the morning, and then I teach the kids, and I'll teach the kids, and then I'll teach another class in the afternoon. I begin to take classes that works for me. And then I begin working with an online company that also is like a school, like an online virtual public school. I began working with them to do their intake, taking in kids, but I can work that whenever I want. The hours is up to me. I choose whatever hours I want to work. So when they were not on my shift, they were with my husband or whatever else, I would be on there working. So I begin to choose, not obviously a salary that I was, thing that I was used to if I was at the school, but sanity and for the, just betterment across the board, it works. And so when you got to do what you got to do, I think really basing out, using your time wisely. I know people who, as they drive, they use that as their reading time. They get audios for the books that their children are going to be learning, and they use that and they play it across the, on the Bluetooth and let the kids hear it. They use that as a way to start doing discussion with going through text. They use that time to review it. They, what is it? I know another woman, she was really sweet. She was a staunch supporter of homeschool here in Charlotte. She used to give us so many free tickets to all of these amazing events. She's like, I cannot homeschool, but I want my child to be homeschooled, and I'm willing to support you guys in any way possible. So she put her son inside of a Charlotte homeschool with another family that homeschool all throughout the day, and other people that were a part of it. And she funded us heavy in the sense of all events that was taking place in Charlotte. She was just, she was with a bank, and she's like, I'm going to give you guys all the tickets. I'm going to release this. She gave us an entire stadium for movie, all sorts of things. She's like, I can't do it, but I want my kid to get it, and I want to support it. And so she put her son inside of a co-op, and her son was in a homeschool co-op with other parents who were homeschooling that taught him. And that was her way of contributing to it. And she was just sold on the fact she wanted him homeschooled. So she worked full time in the banking industry. And so it's like, you will find ways. There are those other options that are out there. I know here in Charlotte, I don't know for other states, but we have a full homeschool program that's at the Y. So there are those things too that are out there where it's like, okay, I can let you take this, these sorts of things, and then I can take this portion with you when I get off of work. You can surely make it work. Like I think, like Sister Melissa, I know, like Sister Melissa said, where your heart is, if you put your heart and prioritize it, the Father will surely work it out. I didn't know anything about this school. I kid you not, I knew nothing about this school at all whatsoever. And it just landed in my lap, like boom, and then the other school just kind of landed right there in my lap. But it has literally allowed me this. It has allowed me to work it when I have the time to work it, but not take away from what I'm doing with my kids, so yeah.
That's a blessing. I feel like y'all just touched on everything. Although I'm thankful, like I had never really had to work. Like my work was when I was in school. And so I had to do that. Like I had to switch my days when I started doing clinicals for my children. And so that's the blessing of homeschool. Like again, what Ovadia and Eliana said, you gotta do what works and also make sure you're not stressed out. Because throughout my whole, like while I was in school, it wasn't bad because like I did all my papers on Sundays, but when I started clinicals, that's when I started feeling burnt out. And thankfully, I think my husband, like that was when he kind of saw, was like, okay, we're gonna do something different. And earlier this year, he got my boys in the Cellas in the full power homeschool. And what I did was, again, like some days, I mean, you'll have it where it's like, okay, as long as, okay, reading and math, and because I've had those times too, where it's like doing so much, I felt like, and was getting overwhelmed. And it was times where I had to be like, okay, let's just tackle the core subjects in the morning, won't spend as long on it for the sake of, because my days was Thursday and Fridays, but then I also had supervisions and staff meetings throughout the week also. So I had to pretty much mold my schedule around that, but made it work, got through it. But yeah.
Hallelujah. It'll surely, it will work. It will work, Ileana, you said that as well. I can, and I think telling yourself that is really important, even when it seems like, no, I can't. It's like, no, yeah, you really can. You really can. It's so true. So the last topic that we have here is just when homeschool is not an option, for whatever reason that is, there's sometimes that it's not an option. So Zakia, did you want, that first one is yours. Do you want to go ahead and, sorry, I copied it from it.
Oh, you're fine. So I just put on there, it's like, just because you can't homeschool doesn't mean you can't be your child's first teacher. So yeah, start them off early. Because again, like we can all say this, we've homeschooled our children since birth, technically, teaching them how to read, how to say letter sounds. So encourage them with, encourage reading with books. I always said that with my boys when they were little, before they started learning how to read, just reading books, making it very interactive for them. Playing educational games, like Spanish bingo, and even like other like Monopoly that teaches counting and teaches them, how to, work with currency, accounting. Even Mancala is another good strategic game that young kids like to play. And also, like, if your child is in school, don't, because it's been like that for me, where growing up, like, granted, my parents always said, like, how was school today? They never really dug into, they always taught us things like, okay, what to do, what not to do, things like that. But like when you're at the dinner table, encourage that open dialogue, like, okay, how was school? What did you learn? And also it starts at home. And then of course, being built up in biblical principles and the Father's word and Torah is very helpful so that they know, like, Father forbid, if they do encounter a situation or hear something that, like they know, like basically they'll have wisdom, knowing the difference between right and wrong. And then also encourage, like I said, encouraging them to be open and honest always. So always keep that open dialogue with your children so that they know, like, never have secrets, because that's how we are with our boys at home, like, no secrets. Even when we go to the homeschool meetup groups and they're like out with their associates, if they're like walking around or playing and talking, like they'll tell me, like, if it's something out of pocket. But thankfully that's never been the case with this group. But yeah, so I just encourage that.
Sorry, I
I
pushed.
also, oh,
No,
sorry,
no, you good, sis. I'm just moving this out your way. Yeah.
okay. So yeah, I was just also going to say, especially having worked in the school system, and some things we did before pulling the boys out, definitely volunteering at your child's school. And if you can't volunteer, sending a family member that can. My mom actually volunteered at the boys' Mandarin school like 3 days a week at one point. Well, actually, I think she was up to 4 days a week at one point. But just filling in when my husband and I were both working part time to just kind of have eyes and ears there. That makes a big difference. And definitely keeping that line of communication open, asking, what are your children learning? Um, what are they celebrating? Why? What are these different things? Like, you know, for example, I remember being in the school system and they call it Character Day, and it just always happens to be either right before or on Halloween or something like that. So, knowing that you always have the option to opt out of those things. And then also wanted to share with another scholarship in North Carolina called it's through the College Foundation of North Carolina and Children's Scholarship Fund. I think is the specific one, but if you go to College Foundation North Carolina, you can see it. But it's a scholarship for private schools. So a lot of times you can find more smaller settings that might be at least closer to your beliefs or that kind of thing with a private school. We utilize that for our youngest for 1 year before he was able to go to the Mandarin charter school. But um, yeah, definitely that could just always be an option too, to maybe give you a better option for education. And then it kind of also like what we said before that Ovadia saying about like co-ops that you could send your child to if you can't physically do it yourself. Like here, we've said about the YMCA homeschool program. So some people actually just send their children to those programs and they're technically a homeschooler, but they are not physically there teaching them all the subjects. So those are options as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Praise the Most High.
All praise.
Well, praise the Lord, absolutely. I would just add on top of that, the sisters really did cover it. It's just as a teacher, I would see a lot of parents who, in their way of advocating for their children, was being aggressive. They wanted to show you, I'm the parent and you're going to follow what I say. Now, we know the public school system is kind of really set up to kind of keep parents out. It's very, it's to keep you out. But then when you have parents that are active and that are involved, it does hold teachers to a higher standard for a fact. I have witnessed that, and it does. But what parents confuse is being involved and going past boundaries, being aggressive or being passively aggressive or, being threatening in a sense in their tone and constantly texting or emailing in a sense in a way where it's, it's just the demeanor of it is not well. It's a disservice because what happens is that your kid becomes a target. Your kid becomes a target, and your kid becomes the one that no one wants to be involved with, and the one that no one wants to really help. The one that, you would think, no, that's not the case because these are adults dealing with children, right? And so adults are not going to make children pay for their parents' nasty attitudes. Absolutely wrong. You want to talk about myths? Put that one at the top of the list. I've seen it time and time again. You come up there with your nasty attitude, and you better believe that your child is going to be, they literally is sitting there like lumps on a log. Nobody wants to be involved with that kid. The treatment toward the kid is absolutely insane because it's like, I don't, this is not my kid. You're not with the attitude towards the kid is really a reflection of how the parents deal. So I do think that you should be involved. I do think that you should, be there and be present. You appreciate as teachers, appreciate parents that are that way for the most part, but don't take that to the extent to be nasty. You can definitely, when, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, you can respect the teacher's position because she is teaching your child, and you can impart your beliefs. And a lot of times people will respect that, but you don't have to be nasty about it. You don't have to do the tip, whatever. You don't got to do stuff like that to think that it's going to make a difference. It actually hurts your kid more than not. So I don't recommend that, the nasty attitude. That's not what we should be doing as believers anyways. I do know that you can request a copy of the materials from the school at the beginning of the school year. So a lot of parents don't do it, or some because they just don't know that they can, or you just never made aware of it, but it actually is within the what's name letters. You can request to ask to receive the material that your child is going to be taught for each of the subjects. And you can see what they're going to cover because again, this material is already prepared. Teachers are just going through what they've already been given. They bring it to life, so to speak. So you can ask to see that material. This way you can prepare your kid as they're getting ready to come up on certain topics that might go against what you all believe in. That's against your morals and your values. You can say, all right, well, this is what's going to be covered on, you're not going to know the exact day because it's going to give you what's covered in that segment, but you can prepare them for that section that's coming up to say, this is what the school is going to talk about. This is what your teachers are going to introduce in this class. Let me go ahead and give you the real truth, and let me go ahead and give it to you, so that you're not being deceived by this, that, and the third. You prepare them. You send them out there prepared. This way, when they hear certain things, it just rolls off, or they can properly place it. And then when they come back, ask them, okay, so what was it that you guys, did they have that lesson today? What was it that you guys talked about? And then bring them back to what it is that you told them as far as what the real truth is. So you can request that information and you can redirect it in that way. I highly recommend that. I think it's really good. You can also request from the teacher when they're doing certain projects that are against your beliefs, your morals, and your values to say, I would rather my kid not participate in that project. Can you assign him or her a different project so that they, can still participate in the sense of, with the material, but not doing this. This is against, our morale, and I don't want him or her to do that. So you can request an additional project. Also, honestly, I know we don't think that way, but getting an F is not the worst. It's not going to be in the class, but you're going to have a handful of assignments that you are totally against with certain things. And so if it is that they're not willing to work on it or they're not willing to bend, let your kid do the portion of enough that you are comfortable with, and the portion that they're asking them that's against where you stand, don't do it. So you're not going to get 100 on it. You already know that, but it's not a big deal at the end of the day. It is what it is. It doesn't hurt anything in a grand spectrum. And when it is that you have, as we saw with the gentleman at the beginning, when we first started this session tonight, that, when there are things that are just, that needs to be spoken up for, when you've already addressed the teacher, when you've, requested curriculum, when you've done certain things, then don't be afraid to stand up and fight in the sense of, doing it the right way, to be that voice and to be that advocate for your child. Maybe if the child is being, isolated, or, especially when they term you as the religious kid, etc. You do accept and you do understand that public education is a general service. It's a service that's given to the general public to say that we offer free education as a part of, our, this is according to the whatever American system, whatever. We are required to give free education, right? And this is what it consists of. So you already know kind of what your child is walking into with that, if they have a certain curriculum that they are going to cover. So this is something that's the understanding that you have as well, and as the background. But if it is that you have to send them, then do what you have to do that's going to make it work the best for you and for your kid. To tell them to completely change the curriculum, and then no, they're not going to, because it's not their responsibility to build your child morally. That's your responsibility. And so they don't feel the desire nor the need to have to build your child morally. They say, we're going to build them morally, but we're going to build them morally according to the morals that are ours, and according to the values that are ours, and according to the standards that are ours. And if you have an issue with that, or that does not fit well with you, then you have the option to take them and do as you please on your own. And that's true, to be quite honest, it really is. So make it work for you. Be that person that goes and that's going to go ahead to get the information and to deprogram, going and coming out. But understand the reality of it too, and that's not to sound like cruel. That is the reality. That is the reality. It's like when you go into certain private schools, I don't want you to teach, whatever. This is my school. This is what my standards are. And I'm not going to change my stance. This is a private school. This is what we teach. This is what we stand for. It's like if we didn't teach holy days inside of our school. Somebody said that to us at Abraham Academy. It's like, you got to be kidding me. This is a part of our curriculum. So we wouldn't change it. And that's the same exact mindset for them. We're not going to change the curriculum for you. However, we are required by law to give you a copy of it. We are required to make you aware of it, and we'll do that, but we're not going to change it. So use that as your benefit to get what it is that you need so that you can prepare your kid, prepare your child, and I think that with doing that, it's a way better advantage as to what it was for us back in the day. We didn't necessarily get the preppings. It just was what it was. Now we know these things, and you get to actually prep them, which I think will do good service. It'll do good.